Jeeyoon, welcome to the Easy Conversations podcast. Thank you for taking the time to join me today and come on and also be open to sharing your story. As we've touched on before, being a musician, and I'm sure we'll get into that in terms of what that means for you. But there is an aspect of storytelling, and that was what I was drawn to in your story. And in terms of the work you do as well and how you serve people in the work you do. So I'm sure we'll get into how all of that fits in and how you approach music from your side of things. But before we get into it, I do want to give you an opportunity to share with the listeners a little bit about yourself, who you are, and what's brought you here in the current chapter of your life.
Mm. I'm classical pianist, and now I call myself author. Jeeyoon Kim. I started playing piano when I was 4. A lot of people
Mm,
surprised to hear how early classical musicians start their career or their instrument that early on. And to me, it wasn't a conscious choice. I don't think
mm,
I had to consciously say, I'm going to take a piano lesson from age 4. Thanks to my parents, put me into the lesson. But I always remember it was super fun. And I
mm,
was a musical kid. If anything, I couldn't think anything but music in my life.
mm,
And so that's how I got started. And I loved singing. And I also played flute. And about middle school, I had to make a decision. Okay, June, you have to be actually serious about practicing, actually making it into lifelong passion. I had to have a different kind of practice routine and different teacher. Then I have to audition for the art high school. That's how I knew because I couldn't think something else. Although my dad, who was close to me, actually, I was daddy's girl and I was much, much
mm,
closer to my dad than mom. But at the
mm,
time, my dad said, Jiyun, you're such a intelligent kid. You're excelling in academics. And he said, why don't you go to a career where more secure, like a pharmacy or
mm,
medicine, and you make a
mm,
lot of money and you can also play piano at the side. When he suggests that, when he actually seriously suggested, and I realized no way that I could imagine myself doing anything but music. Although I knew that, but
mm,
when he suggested, I really wanted to run away from that idea. And I made it really
mm,
clear to my dad that wasn't my intention and that's my passion. And he didn't really support that. And in those times that my mom and dad were separating, and my mom's thinking was that your dad is cheating. That has been going for entire our wet marriage, and now you're old enough to
mm,
understand. I'm gonna divorce. There was no emotional fight all of a sudden. It was perfect marriage to my view. So there was no
mm.
fighting whatsoever during growing up. Just one day when I got in high school, she told me, you're old enough. I'm just gonna divorce now. And I was telling
Mm,
my dad that, what's going on? Mom sounds you're having an affair. And he said, your mom is overreacting. And that's a
mhm,
misunderstanding. But then he
mhm,
didn't change his notion of you better go with medicine or pharmacy. And that's where, for now, I'm going to support mom. I don't know what the truth is, but because my mom supported music. So one day
mm,
I packed up my backpack and left home to mom, which mom was temporarily staying with my grandmother's house. And I thought I'm
mm,
going to see him, I don't know, in a couple months. We're just basically 10 minutes away. And because as a woman, I just wanted to be supportive for mom. Although I wasn't that close to mom. Mom was businesswoman. I basically had two dads. I never had mom
mm,
in growing up actually. But at that time I thought, okay, maybe I will see him. He might come to my high school or I don't know. I'm going to stay contact with him. But he didn't.
mhm,
And that turned into 4 years of high school and undergrad. silence. And actually, I got a one phone call from my dad one day, and I obviously recognized his voice. And he said he's getting married. That was during undergrad, and
Mhm.
he's married to that lady that mom was accusing too. And since you're
Mm.
my daughter is pianist, why would I ask someone else to play wedding for the wedding?
Mm.
And then I said I would do, but then I called back and I don't think I can do it. But that was the first
Mm.
time and the last time I heard from him for the last 8 years of my life. And that turned into confusion, that turned into
Mm.
bitterness, and turned into disappointment. I thought he loved me, but why
Mm.
you're not here? But to make a long
Mm.
story short, after the undergrad, I decided to study abroad because
Mhm.
that was all along my plan. So I came
Yeah.
to Indiana University for master's and doctorate degree. All and then before I go abroad, I made a decision. I'm gonna call him my dad and wanted to tell him how I grew up just fine without you. I just wanted to make a
Mm.
point. I just wanted to tell him
Mhm.
that how disappointed I was. How could you not be there for me? And so I prepared my scripts to tell him. And I made a phone call before, maybe several weeks before I came to America. And we decided to meet up. It was very short phone conversation on the phone. And so we met up at the cafe, and when he walked to the where I was sitting, I had all the scripts to memorize to tell him how much I didn't need you and all that. But as soon as I saw him, all I was thinking was how much I missed him, how much,
Mm.
mm, how wonderful to see him. So we immediately he smiled really big and hugged me. And we cried maybe for several minutes and we sat down.
Mhm.
And the first thing he said, how could you leave me like that? I never thought you would betray me like that. And at the moment, I was, for the first time, able to see my dad in in adult as a person he was a person all of a sudden could not empathize another person's feeling, could was
Mm.
wrapped around his own world, could not
Mm.
accept his flaws, or maybe somewhat
Mhm.
narcissistic. I was a kid. And even as a fake, I wish that he would first thing he would say was that it's so unfortunate we had to be separated. I couldn't be there for you, but I love you. I missed you. Maybe that was
Mhm.
all that I wanted. That wasn't how he came across. He was kept going on and about. I was the only thing he had in his life, and I left him. But anyhow, I in the midst of all the conversation, I told him I grew up fine. I got a full scholarship, and now I'm going to America, and I'm gonna study piano. I told very softly, I'm fine. I'm grown up
Mm.
now, and I came to America, and that's how my higher degree of piano pursuing started. And I actually still didn't know what I would do in life, but I knew anything but piano, that's what
Right.
I'm going to do. So I
Mhm.
couldn't think of what that meant, even what is a pianist means. I couldn't
Mhm.
really conceptualize. I just wanted to get better, the best I could. And
Yes.
when I came to United States, obviously with amazing school and mentor and teacher, I was surrounded with amazing musicians, and I felt that I'm stretching to as far as I could as a musician, and it was very much like a cocoon. It's protected, and
Mm.
only thing I could think of was music. And I savored that moment, those years so much. And during those times, I met my ex-husband, and he was also piano major, and we shared passion together. And I remember thinking every time I watched movie, related to father and daughter dynamics, anything, I was
Mm,
crying so hard. And I knew that
mm,
I was not I didn't solve that issue. But then meeting him, finally, another guy in my life just loved me unconditionally, healed me. And little by
mm,
little, he said, I will love you when you're all wrinkly and in your 80s. You'll be still so cute
mm,
to my eyes. And that kind of just unconditional love, it was so needed at that time of my life. And despite all the friends and family thought I would get married so late, I got married in 28 years old. Maybe it's so young, it's not, maybe not old, but I don't know what, but
mm,
at the time felt was young. I was still doing my doctorate degree and we got
mhm,
married and it was wonderful. I actually thrived in a marriage. And again, very protective from the world. And I was pursuing
mm,
still my study. And then
mm,
one day, my ex husband now said that something is wrong in a computer. And he, at that time, was stopped pursuing piano because he said there's no money in it and he wanted to make money and he became a computer programmer. And then he said something virus, and I think it's somewhere in Russia they're spying on me or something. And I thought, oh, okay, what's going on? And I obviously didn't know what was a computer language or whatnot. So I left him alone. That lasted maybe about 3 days. Oh, he almost not eating or sleeping, really obsessive with his computer. And then one night he said, hey, Jeeyoon, come downstairs. There's someone outside. And then I was really someone outside looking at us, spying on us. And I look outside and there was just dark and I couldn't see anything. It
mm,
was and maybe it was at 8 p.m. I said, okay. And then next thing I noticed that he was holding a knife and be careful. I'm gonna protect you, okay? There's a people out there is really seriously about to harm us. And at that
mm,
time, for a first time, I realized, is he seeing something that I don't see? And that's where it was like I'm in the movie that all of a sudden the scene, everything changes but me. And I'm realizing, oh, I'm in the different world. That is that kind of realization. And at the time, finally, I realized something is off with him. And
mm,
again,
mhm,
to make a long story short, he was addicted to all kinds of drugs, to narcotics, to cocaines, to everything possible. You go to the
mm,
narcotics, then you have to get another thing to wake up from it. And all in the midst of it, I was the only one who couldn't see it. Apparently, all the
mm,
friends and family noticed that something was off with him. They could not pinpoint. But growing up in Korea, which at that time was drug-free country, that's not in my
mm,
radar. And I didn't look for it. I didn't know how to look for it. And I started to have this realization of reality of now or the society or how many people, how many families and friends are suffering from this issue. I was completely blind by it. And when I said to my mentor at that time, he said, you need a therapy. And I said, me,
mm,
I'm not the one who needs therapy. He needs a
mhm,
therapy. And I, no, there's a reason why you couldn't see it. You need a therapy.
mm,
There's something wrong with you not be able to see it. You have to wake up
mm,
to the reality. At the time, I had a dream to become a I don't know, famous is not the right word, the pianist that I want to become. I had a dreams in my life, but all those
mhm.
dreams didn't matter. I just have to survive. It was just
Yes.
basic survival of wanted to live life because someone else, my ex, choosing death. And I gave him ultimatum. At that time, I gave him choose me or drug. I will be with you. I will do everything I can to help you to get out of it if you choose me. And let's just clean up this. And
Mhm,
when I said that, I thought he'll be on his knees begging for forgiveness and let's try this. And we cry. I don't know what I was expecting. Maybe I was
Right.
more expecting that. But then when I
Mm.
asked him ultimatum, he said, I'm sorry, I can't.
Yeah.
And for the first time, I realized he was being honest. And I'm thankful for his
Mm.
honesty, actually. And realize, okay, he couldn't choose me. Is it better that he went on with another woman? I don't know. But in the end, he couldn't choose me. That shocked me. And of course, I had to leave the house just once again, just like I left my dad, packed up just
Mm.
one backpack. I don't even have my childhood photo albums because I left home like that. And I left the home that we built together, the years they lived. Just one day I found another room in a Craigslist and just left. And I felt that someone else put the reset button behind my back and pushed that button without me knowing.
Mm.
And at that time, I realized how difficult life can be. I had a difficult time with my dad all through high school and undergrad, building the trust with Guy. And this ex helped me to heal it. But then there's another part of life unexpectedly shake me to the root. And that I finished the doctorate and I still had a dream. But at those years after my higher degree, I was staying ground, crawling, just hoping to find just myself, not a pianist, just myself. And then I decided I need a fresh start after divorce, after years. And I came to San Diego, where I actually had a job offer for one of the university as a lecturer position. And at that time, I was basically selected in all internal interviews and everything. And I actually thought sunny California sounds great. That's
Yeah.
something that I needed. And I came to
Mhm.
California. But then when I came, the job offer evaporated. Yeah, apparently there was
Mm.
internal another choice candidate they had, and they went for that because this person was already working for the university. And whatever the reason, I was all of a sudden in a foreign world from Indiana, no friends, no job, no, not knowing anybody. And even though sun was great, but it was foreign. I wanted to have weather, snow, maybe miserable weathers. Unfamiliarity was scary. And at that time, I thought one way to become pianist or be able to give a concert, which was become professor, because
Mhm.
I had two master's degree, even teaching piano and piano performance, and a doctorate with a reputable university. I thought it would open up very easily, but it didn't. Obviously, university
Mm.
position is something that God has to decide and given to you. It's not something you
Mm.
pursue. And at
Mm.
that time, I realized, why did I even want it to become professor for? Is that for the honorable title? What is it that you wanted? And if I really look deep into it, that wasn't something that I really wanted. I liked the stability of that. I liked the idea of it. But what I actually had to do was not really something I wanted to. And at the
Mm.
time, I decided once again, everything feels reset, ground zero. At least it's in the minus. When I going through divorce, that was like a dark tunnel of minus. And here I
Yeah.
felt, okay, white canvas once again. So
Mm.
I started to, s- what is the something that I wanted to do as a pianist, and which was creating album. And 10 years ago, and I put an idea into a Kickstarter. Since I didn't know where to start, I thought looking at the camera and tell them my idea. I am an artist. I have this idea. I want to collect. pieces that has a feeling of longing. It's called 10 more
Mm.
minutes. It's not 10 more hours, 10 more years. Humble wish of 10 more minutes. The collection of pieces that dear to my heart is best friends. I want to collect those
Mm.
pieces in the shape of this album and CD, and I wanted to deliver to you. That was a $30,000 pledge, and I had no idea how it's going to go, but I still put the idea out there because
Mhm.
I closed the door of university. I realized I had to close that door. I cannot put one leg in an adjunct position, started from South Dakota, leg up. I didn't want to do that. So I closed that door, and then I have to all in to other possibility,
Mhm.
which is creating my own path, whatever that means, with what I can do, what I'm
Mhm.
passionate about. And that was one idea that I put it out. And
Mm.
I asking money, it's something I never trained, or I don't think we can train that.
Mhm.
Tremendously difficult. And
Mhm.
even actually harder to friends, harder. It's easier to the stranger. Hey, I'm so and so. But with the
Mhm.
friends and family, feel like I'm begging for
Mm.
grocery, which is not. And I have
Right.
to change perspective so much. I am an artist. I am looking at this thing which is called art, and we are all looking at this art, and I am the one who can actually create and deliver. And with other people's help, we can create this neutral thing. And I had to separate myself from who I am as Jeeyoon, as a person, and a pianist and artist, Jeeyoon. And we're
Mm.
looking at this thing together. Let's make it happen. I am also
Mm.
contributing. You are contributing. Let's do it together. And from that experience, I realize money has a power. Money has a message. Money is an action. And some people, hey, great idea, sounds good, versus someone who donated $1 that already has that, hey, sounds good, let's do it. You don't have to say much, but money can
Mhm.
have a lot of message and power. And
Mm.
I learned through that process. And whenever I see someone else trying to do something, I don't have to say something. I just donate. Because I
Right.
know how much that can change this person's
Mm.
whatever they're trying to do. And I really realized that money is the method to send a message that I
Mm.
substitute. And in the end, yes, that $30,000 pledge was successfully funded. And I feel again, I'm here in this world, but the world has shifted. And in this way was only better. Like in
Mm.
the ex, or my father, whenever he said, why could you, how could you betray me? All those moments was me alone, and the surrounding become dark. But in here, I'm here alone, and all of a sudden there's a sunshine, there's a people around me, and holding hands and hugging. And I felt the sense of support and love and community. And then I had a great sense of responsibility to make this album the best I could ever made.
Mm.
And I did that. I went to New York and recorded and then shared every step of the way to creating that album. And then from that experience, and then I created concerts too. And when I invited people who donate for the album or whoever come to the concert. Now this concert is not just me showing up, hey, see what I can do as a pianist. It meant much more than that. I need to share, but I wanted to make sure people are with me and how much I
Mm.
care your experience as well. So then I started to
Mhm.
think I can't just play piano and disappear to the backstage. There's something more needed to happen between. And since I'm a pianist and I'm not going to all of a sudden try play jazz or pop songs, I'm not going to change the core content of what I do, but I'm going to change
Right.
the delivery of it. How can I connect to people to that delivery? And what I realize is that it's I don't have to change the core content, but if I set it
Mhm.
up with such a way with the storytelling, with the set it up, what it means to me personally. And all of a sudden, they can feel who I am. And when I started to play a note, then they realize what I'm trying to feel, an essence of emotion, so much more deeply. And
Mm.
I always trying to think what kind of story would impact the most with this particular piece. And it's not necessarily about historic context of the piece. Sometimes I bring it up, but it's in the context of why that matters, why
Mhm.
Beethoven's deafness matters, because how much devastated he might have been. And from that
Mm.
devastation, as a musician, can you imagine you couldn't hear what you wrote? In that devastation, he created this genius, innovative, because he's deaf, he could do more
Mm.
innovative way. Because he's just
Mm.
so frustrated, he wanting to find a hope and light. And I'm
Mm.
bringing up those some of the historic context if it makes sense to me to deliver this message through the music.
Mhm.
And I search for it. And because classical music process is such a slow process, I started when I was 4 and I'm still practicing. I am 40, 45 years old now, 41 years of nonstop practicing. And I wish that when I became 20, if after practicing 16 years, I'm master. Now I get it. I don't have to practice
Mm.
anymore. I can just do it. It doesn't work like that. And I wish that
Mhm.
were a little easier. But because of that struggle, every time each piece takes long time, months, sometimes years to master it. I get to live with this piece. It's like a person, it's like relationship
Mm.
building. You go through seasons, and at first you love it, and sometimes you don't like it. You hate it, and you doubt why you even chose this piece in the first place. And then at the end of that journey, before concert, I always come back to the first impression of why I fell in love with this piece in the first place.
Mm.
And that's what I want to share with people. And I have to, and then during those process, whenever I practice a piece, I think about what does it resonate with me? What story? And one of the piece that I want to give you an example is that there's a Rachmaninoff vocalise that I played. That's such a soulful, such a pain in it. And
Mm.
it's not a pain. What kind of pain that I experienced it? Of course, I experienced a lot of pain, but the pain in a separation, pain in a war. The Rachmaninoff go through many wars in his life. And I remember one occasions where when I was 7 years old, I asked my grandma, all of a sudden I never asked my grandma where is her parents are. Where are they? I asked, I was just lying around with my grandma in the living room, like, Grandma, where are your parents? Do you have siblings? And all of a sudden, I never asked her, and I'm so curious about it. And she said,
Mm.
Yes, I do. I have two older sisters and one older brother. And she said, when I was 10 years old, there was a rumor in her town that there gonna be a civil war in her town, and it's safer for everybody to start walk towards the south. And
Mm.
as the youngest of the family, it was just immediate warning sign, and everybody started to pack something, hurry, and walk towards the south. And because she was the youngest and she joined the neighbors, let's go quickly, and rest of the family will join the next day in the next town on the south. And just you go ahead and we'll meet you.
Mm.
And that day, civil war indeed took place, and Korea was separated from South and North.
Mhm.
And ever since that, she didn't see her family. And I was so struck by her story. And even at just 7 years old,
Mhm.
I felt bad to ask that question. And also, how could you live with that? How could you
Mm.
live with that kind of pain and continuously
Mhm.
live it?
Mhm.
And she doesn't know if they're well, died, or no possible. And Rachmaninoff, that piece, describe a pain and love, separation, missing. And that
Mhm.
story came to me. And because Rachmaninoff expressed those emotions in music, and me playing that music, and people listening to that music in the same space, we're
Mm.
experiencing something abstract
Mm.
together. And from that moment, we feel a sense of healing. It's not you bring you down, it's a togetherness, or together we feel once again. It's in Korea, there's a saying, sadness, if you share sadness, it's become half. If share joy, it
Mm.
doubles up. And I feel
Mm.
that in those kind of moments, when what I do with music, when we share, it just becomes energy of healing. And let's imagine I play same Rachmaninoff, same emotion without the story. It will be still impactful. It will be still
Mm.
beautiful. But you can double that with the story and what I'm coming to the piece, what I want you to
Mhm.
experience from the story. Then you're like,
Mhm.
wow, I miss that person, maybe in their life.
Mm.
Or there
Mm.
maybe imagine what would be like my grandma, what would be like her siblings. You're putting your perspective in someone else. And I think the best way of, I find, healing ourselves is trying to heal someone else.
Mm.
And we are shifting our perspective from ourselves, sometimes here and sometimes outside. And from that exercise, from that kind of listening, active listening, such a
Mm.
powerful tool to live life. And I want
Mhm.
to provide that from my music making, from my concert.
Mhm.
And people sometimes say, you're trying to do too much with piano. You're not trying to change the world. And maybe I'm not changing the world, but I do feel I'm changing something, which is
Right.
very powerful. I think a change of perspective, change of one's belief, it's hardest change. But when someone who can, oh, going back to the memory or something that you bury deep inside and never want to open it up, but by listening to a music, you just softly open up, softly go
Mm.
there. It's not forced. It's not, hey, tell me about your childhood. It's not like even talking about it. It's just a sense
Mhm.
of forgiveness, sense of healing, sense of, ah, all is okay. Everything is fine. That sense of
Mhm.
courage, strength, or peace, it comes to you abstract way. And I find that's a powerful way of appreciating music. And I try to do that. And I feel enormous responsibility with what I do. And I can't just play piano. I'm using piano and classical music. It's such a powerful art form to
Mm.
be able to do it. And I use that
Mhm.
to connect people. And I use that to connect myself into music. So people realize, oh my gosh, what is a classical music? I don't even have to think about it because I will feel it.
Mm.
Then if once you experience it, you can't live without.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I appreciate all of that. Thank you so much. And there's so much depth to everything you've shared. And I have a few questions to ask based on a lot of the things you've shared. But one of the things that really jumped out to me was you shared the concept of enabling your healing by healing others. And I think part of it, I see that even as in the therapy world, that there's a couple of things you touched on, right? When you're able to connect to someone else's pain because you've also perhaps gone through some sort of heartbreak or loss, it gives it meaning. And then when you're able to help someone else heal, it gives your pain meaning. And a lot of the times, what I see, and just to simplify it, people will take their pain and continue to then hurt others and use that as a justification. Or people take their pain and use it as a vessel of healing,
Ah,
not only themselves, but others. We have that choice. And what I'm hearing from you is you've chosen the latter and you're using your music as a way of spreading that joy, as you shared, but also creating that common sense of bringing people together to heal together.
yeah, I think music or being a musician or being a classical pianist is you become a vessel for the music. And music
Yes.
already has that power. It's like moving energy. And because I put that into my cup, if I put myself up to the front, which is I always have this analogy of if my cup is plastic red colored cup, people only see this red colored cup. But if I'm
Mhm.
a glass cup, they will see what is
Mhm.
inside. But they cannot drink this cup of music without me. Someone has
Mm.
to play it to be able to appreciate it. So my job is to be as much as transparent as possible. By being transparent means that I feel the pain. It's not me, it's me, my pain too. But they are feeling
Mhm.
that pain through me and ultimately the music, what is trying to say. So
Mhm.
whenever I play it, any music, even joyous music, I feel the intention from the composer. And I try really hard to connect with the composer who may not be here now. And I feel it. I wanted to sometimes go back 200 years back and hug the composer. And hey, guy, hey, here. I know it's
Mm.
been difficult,
Mm.
isn't it? And I can feel it.
Mhm.
You are trying to find solace in music or the
Mm.
light in
Mm.
music. And when I feel it, I wanted to deliver this one to the people who may be struggling. Then they feel as dark as it is right now, they may feel, but there's just some sense of sound. I heard of some people like experienced like near death experienced. Only the last thing they
Mhm.
will have it is a sense of hearing. They hear if they
Mm.
always describe heaven as a sound of angels singing and that first before visual. And I think that sound, the music, has the power to piercing into our soul
Mhm.
directly and bypassing the time too. So I
Mhm.
feel that when I'm trying to connect with the composer and then try really connect, deliver this to a real people that's trying to, as a therapy, their therapist listening to me, or someone else sitting next to you and not saying much at all, but listening and nod and or
Mhm.
hug. And
Mhm.
that is sometimes enough for people to feel okay. And I think the sense of empathy and sense of connection, that intention, I think that's
Mhm.
opening up to heal myself because it did, and also heal others.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I appreciate all of that. And you mentioned you got into music at the age of 4 and it wasn't really a conscious decision, but and you've talked about thinking in terms of the language of music. Like for people like myself who aren't musically inclined, are you able to give an idea of what does it feel like to think in music, in the language of music, right? Like how does that work? And you've touched on some of the composers
Mm.
sharing their pain. So you touched on the whole storytelling aspect. How does that work from a form of it is a form of language, right?
Yeah.
So is it just something different that your brain is able to pick up on and work with?
Yes, that definitely things it I guess in many ways there's a reason why this musicians or classical musicians need a long training, because if you cannot pronunciate, which means technique, be able to play an instrument, you cannot
Mhm.
transcendent. And
Mhm.
ultimate goal is the raw expression of music and me expressing, communicating with emotions. But then when you're four, you're just busy, okay, fingering four, move your third finger and five finger to more complicated scales, and your body is so busy processing what you need to do, which is technical aspect, physical aspect of it. But
Mhm.
then, and then your teacher will say, no, that's not the right expression. That's not, you're not expressing joy, no, you're not expressing pain. And then I'm
Mhm.
busy enough to moving my fingers in 10 different directions. So then there's other aspect of creating a shape of sonic structure, and
Mm.
it's like a castle, but then it's with a sound form. So you have to know
Mm.
this valley, and then you're going to go up to this climax, you're going to stay there the climax, and then you're going to come down, and then you have to hold that structure, let's say 10 or 20 or 30 minutes long piece, and that's your intellectual side of it has to be there, and the emotional
Mm.
side of it. And for piano, 10 fingers, and your both feet are constantly moving, adjusting the sound and toned. I think I don't know other musicians, but certainly for pianists, this is the physical, intellectual, emotional. And then also I have a conversation with my own voice, the voice of
Mm.
Jeeyoon, that out of nowhere, in Jiyoon, there are so many other voices, judging voice, gentle
Yeah.
voice, or the observing voice. Oh, Jiyoon, you're doing great. Whatever the voice, it's actually a
Right.
distraction. It's because not part of the
Mm.
music, but I'm hearing it.
Mm.
So there's music, there's also my voice, which I want to be, it's like a meditation. I hear it, but I don't want to engage with it. Whether even
Right.
if it's a positive one, it's not part of the music.
Mm.
So
Mhm.
ultimately, why I'm practicing piano is that when I perform, when I play or share the music with people, I'm in this zone where I'm just feeling the music and my fingers are doing what I might intend to do to express that raw intention of sentence. It can be just one
Mhm.
tenses. It can be I love you. But then I cannot say I and love you. It's not a pronunciation issue. It's I've done it already in my practice.
Right.
And in the raw moment, in the is this I love you part, maybe in a I love you, in a I meet you once again in 5 years
Mhm.
separation and see you once again, and I have this feeling, aching feeling of I missed you and I love you.
Mm. Mhm.
It's not context, right? So
Mhm.
then I
Mhm.
have to put a lot of energy in these emotions, but it's a sound. So whenever I play piano, 95% of the time my eyes are closed because
Mm.
I need to go there. And I
Mm.
trust my fingers because I practice enough, not worry about perfection. In that moment,
Mm.
I'm aiming connection. So when I'm in this zone, what I hear is the music, different layers, especially piano. There might be four voices happening at the same time, and four different voices are similarly expressing something. And I'm feeling the time because music is a time art. It's only happening at the same time. It's only forward momentum. You cannot, I go 10
Mm.
minutes ago, let's change what I just said. It's not visual art. You can change the little mistake there. You can never do that. So it's one time, only present time, moving forward. So then in the moment, I have to control the time for delivery. So even if I might be nervous, so my timing, sense of timing might speed up. But then if I have
Mm.
observer and looking at this structure, I'm finally in the climax. Until then, you don't speed up. When you arrive
Right.
there, you expand the time tiny bit, stay there, and then take your time to come down. And then this little corner, so I'm controlling 10 million things. So I have, but then the ultimate goal is emotion. So that's,
Mm,
I want to go there, sometimes story, sometimes emotion, sometimes I go back to my memory while
mm,
I'm listening, my fingers doing the work. And underneath, I have controlling mm, how that note has to be soft. I would like to be softer, or the color, maybe a little purplish orange. I want to make that happen. But that's underneath
mhm,
of emotion. So I am as much as observer as and an active participation, an active creator, and also
mm,
listener. And I think the listening part is the most important one because it's not
mhm,
like I practice it this way and I want to do exactly that way because today I am different than tomorrow. Even the
mm,
exact same repertoire, same audience, same hall, same piano, if I play it once again tomorrow, will be slightly different. It should be slightly different.
mhm,
And I have to react
mhm,
to the present moment.
mm.
So I practice a lot mind work to get
Right.
there. It's
Yes.
people call it as a performance anxiety, and in performance anxiety, it's a too simplified word in a way because
Mhm,
it's performance anxiety. It's not just performance anxiety. It's you're dealing with yourself, your ego, want to
mhm.
do well. And it's as long as we're human, we want it to do well. You can't just
Yes.
completely let go. And even though it's a goal, it's an inevitable challenge, especially 500 people watching you and you want to do well. And there is
Mhm,
the different part of me awakening, observing. You don't miss that note. There's a challenge section coming up. So then I have to deal with my self voices separated from
mm.
piano and
Yes.
by writing, by meditating, by reshaping my goal as a pianist. Because
Mhm,
if
mhm,
ultimately, if I want it to be perfectly played without mistake, if my aim is to perfect note, then I will never be satisfied. But if my aim is to connect with people, express the raw emotion expression of the music, then even if I may misspell one word, people might cry from it. And because the sincereness and the humbleness of just wanting to share, and ultimately
yes.
that's the goal. And that takes time. And I'm glad
Yeah.
there's a hope in what I do is that getting old is wonderful. Getting old is it's easier to let go. And for me it is. And
Mm,
I care less about perfection or mistakes or what other people think. And I can't please anyone as much as I
mhm,
want to please everybody. I can't. And just give what I prepare so sincerely.
mm,
Hope that people love it. But if not,
mhm.
still what I do matter.
Yes. Yeah, and I think we've talked about this before around having that vulnerability, and what I'm hearing from you is there's so many parallels between how you approach music and how one needs to approach life. Having that level of acceptance that even though I delivered something today, tomorrow I'm no longer the same person. And by extension, whatever I'm going to do tomorrow is going to be different just because of that. And sometimes we get attached to the outcome in the sense that, oh, it has to be perfect, like you said, or even attached to previous success and we want to repeat it, which then, to your point, takes us away from the present moment of what we're supposed to do because we're so focused on what we've done.
Yeah.
And that takes away from the whole art, I would assume. But that's even the thing you had shared to me around being able to surrender, have that humility, which ties the way you approach music to almost like a kind of a spiritual connection in a way where you're connecting to people and there's a sense of unity in there.
Yeah. I think the reason why I started to write was to survive basically from my
Mm,
difficult things in life. And I had to process life more tangibly and to be able to see
mm,
myself. What is my fear? what am I worried about? Where am I? What I'm thinking?
Mhm.
And as soon as I started to write, it became just a little bit easier to be able to see it.
Mm.
And then that journey started, that I started to write more and publish 4 books thus far. And that's not about how to practice piano better or how to trill faster, and then not about the
Mm.
methodology of playing piano. It was about life, because
Mm.
I've learned so much overcoming difficulties with piano, but then I reapply what I've experienced on stage or piano back to life. And what I learned
Mhm.
from life, I apply back to piano. It is a seamless transition to me.
Yeah.
And since what I do is such a vulnerable work, and not many people will present themselves in a vulnerable and trying to connect emotionally with 500 people
Mhm.
only alone on stage, it requires certain level of vulnerability and courage and strength.
Mhm.
And that's why I chose the first book title, Whenever You're Ready. Whenever you're
Mm.
ready is it's a phrase that all of the stage manager tell me before they open the stage door and say, whenever you're ready. And the moment before I go on a stage, they ask me that, whenever you're ready. And whenever I ask myself, Jeeyoon, are you ready? And I said, no, I'm not ready. I can never be ready. I wish
Mm.
I feel like full confidence. Of course I'm ready. It is more fake if I say that. I feel this fear to
Mm.
be present, but I will do it anyway. I feel this sense of vulnerability, but I will go anyway. And
Mhm.
so it's different than I'm ready. It's more of a gentle nod. Yes.
Mm.
And in those split moment of when I accepting, yes. And then when they open the stage door and there's a beautiful stage and enthusiastic audience who's clapping for me. And I felt that everyone has stage called life. And the moment that you have to
Yeah.
say gentle nod to move
Mm.
forward in your life takes practice.
Mm.
It's not I all of a sudden decided, okay, I'm gonna go on a stage. It takes dedication, discipline to move forward with life with the courage and
Mhm.
strength,
Yes.
and everyday practice, especially emotionally and mentally,
Mhm.
where you are. Check in with yourself. And that's what I wrote in my books, that I'm no longer pianist anymore. But because I'm pianist, they connect better whenever they come to my concert. That's a
Yes.
byproduct of it. Of course, I want to share
Mm.
classical music and what I do, but ultimately, I want everybody that whatever you're going through, you're not alone. And that's what I
Mm.
felt, that I thought, why happened to me? Why my ex-husband is drug addict? Why my father disowned me? Or why all of it? But then
Mhm.
when I changed why to what now, it's not why
Mm.
me, but okay, what can I do now? That gave
Yeah.
me a strength, and not
Mhm.
blaming or become a victim, but there's always something I can do, something
Right.
within my control, something I can do better with myself, be gentle with myself.
Mhm.
And from that
Mhm.
gentle place, I feel other people's pain more. I don't want to be hardened so that I ignore other people's what they're going through. If they're going through whatever that is, maybe different shape, maybe they're lost their brother or their friends in cancer, and
Mhm.
many different shapes of pain. But the pain
Mhm.
feels so similar. Just you fell down in life and a
Mhm.
grief from your own self, from life you wanted to,
Mhm.
or whatever that is. And
Yeah.
I think as a human, we know what that is.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
that's what I'm trying to share.
Yes. Yeah, and I appreciate that because that's where we can find that shared sense of connection as humans. Now, coming back to parts of your story, I know you talked about your ex-husband, and there's something you shared when you were explaining the story, and you mentioned that you look to him to help you heal. And sometimes we place that on someone else. And I wonder how much of that made you blind to what was going on for him, because in a way, maybe you were putting him on a pedestal as your savior. And what have you learned from that experience about your own personal healing?
That was a lot of therapy. From a lot of therapy, I realized there was pattern that I'm someone romantically, like a partner in life that I'm looking for.
Mm,
There was a pattern that I'm looking for a father that I lost.
mm,
And I really didn't do it consciously. But in the
of
pattern,
course.
when I see, again, if you have a pattern, that's easier. If you're in early 20s, you don't have a pattern enough. But then if you're 45, you have enough patterns to work with. And I realized,
Yes.
I see, I've been doing that. How can I change my pattern? Which is the
Mm,
hardest thing. One of the hardest thing is that you're getting out of your way of thinking, habit of thinking,
mhm,
the way of your living. And what I
mm,
realized that I put a lot of emotional dependency to a guy.
mhm,
And whatever they provide, whether emotion or the sense of security, finances, whatever, that I wanted to just be underneath and
mm,
no more. And in fact, I was single for longer than 5 years. And during those times, I, I, I decided I will live my life as a single for the rest of my life. And how can
mm,
I be okay with that? And I worked
mhm,
really hard with it. And I surrounded myself with the friends and community that I'm actually, what could men give me that I don't
mhm,
have? And to a
mm,
point that actually I don't need another drama. I don't need them. I
mhm,
really don't need them. And in my mind, it looked like a trouble in problem or reset button in dynamo that is gonna kick when I least expected. And those
mhm,
times, whenever I go to therapy and my therapist said, yeah, they listen and sounds good. Yeah, I understand.
mhm,
And I can hear a lot of pain, that's for sure. But then also he said, if you're 70 years old, 80 years old, I totally get it. But you're 35 years
mm.
old. Don't close that door. Just too hard.
Right.
And I was like,
Yes.
I rolled my eyes like, whatever, I'm fine by myself. So I had
Mhm,
those
mhm,
void of being single and totally rock and roll single.
mhm,
And to a point again, whenever my friends say, Jeeyoon, why don't you just have a coffee with someone? No, I don't want to have a
mhm,
coffee because that gives someone else the hope. I don't want to give them a
mm,
hope because it's one leads to another, one leads to another. I don't need that. I am
mhm,
actually okay. I don't want people to in my life. I built so hard
mhm,
my life independently. I'm actually fine alone.
mhm,
And so I do have relationship now. It's 5 years
mhm,
relationship with a life partner now. And he's the only one built very differently than any of my
mm,
pattern before. And I
mm,
recognize the pattern and I do actively, consciously do another way. And my thing was that I don't want to change myself too much whenever I'm in the relationship because I
mhm,
diminish myself in a relationship. And that's what I recognize it. And I no longer look for father in my relationship. And
mhm,
I recognize what's still the pattern that I have to break from. My pattern is I don't like to conflicts. So I change myself to solve the problem rather than confront it and
mhm.
solve together. And that
Right.
togetherness is so difficult because so much easier for me to just solve it on my own. Yes, I at this point, I'm still learning, still building a tool to what it means being in a relationship. And then
Yes.
when I'm in a relationship, the fear of I don't want another relationship but this. And then the fear of losing this person. And I recognize that fear because I cherish this relationship. The fear of losing it also grows And
Mm-hmm.
I have to again wake up from it and say, you're here. You're here. You're happy now. That whenever whatever happens, life happens,
Mm-hmm.
trust yourself to deal with it. And I put a lot more emphasis on trusting myself, my strength, that whatever the life hits me, I will be able to figure it out. That's a
Mm-hmm.
powerful mantra
Yes.
that I give
Yeah,
myself. And
for sure.
thanks to a lot of therapy to be able to recognize a pattern and continually
For sure.
recognize a pattern and go the other
Mm-hmm.
way, and patternless but freeing and shaping my life direction is healthy and balanced and wise.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think part of it is when you the work never ends, right? As you're sharing here, but cultivating that ability to ground yourself and know and trust yourself that yes, no matter what happens, I'll be okay, gives you that sense of liberation where you can live in the now and enjoy life rather than living in fear that what if this happens and what if that happens? And you only rob yourself from experiencing everything fully.
Right.
And then last question, I know you touched about on your relationship with your father at the beginning. You've talked about the impact it's had throughout your life and some of the patterns that you've developed. Where is that relationship at now? And what are you doing for your own healing around that?
So, well, we left where in the cafe that I met him for the first
Mhm,
time after 8 years of void. Then I kept in touch with him at that time in the past, here and now and then. And whenever I go back to Korea, I met up
mhm,
with him, and it still was very difficult. And through that, my ex-husband, I no longer cry over those any daughter and father relationship movies. And to a point, but then I also realized the more interaction that I have with my dad as a grown up and another grown up, human to human, he was not a person that I want to be friends with. He was a toxic person, was narcissistic
mm,
person, and diminishing my shining light, whatever that is, who I am. And every time I interact with him, I was definitely a trophy daughter for him. And my
mm, mm,
brother, who is not as much in a more society sense, and he was going through very difficult times. And I asked him, my dad, can you be there for him too? That just be there and talk to him. And at the time, he was going through this time and he was in a jail time. And
mm,
I want my dad to visit him or just give him a support. And during the divorce process, he did a DNA test on my brother because he believed that it was not his son. Couldn't believe how different my
mm,
brother was compared to me. And at the time, I sensed the last interaction I had with my dad was that he is not my son. I have nothing to do with
mm,
him. And when I plead him to support my brother, and at that time in my head, I did not vocalize it because I don't like confrontation, of course. And in my head, you don't choose your child. If you choose me as a prize and you teach this son that is also your child, I don't choose you as parent either. You
mhm,
don't
mhm,
choose. And I decided he's not a worthy of person that I want to keep in touch with. And I stopped contacting him. And it's been over decades. And
mm,
I don't question or how he's doing, or I don't actually, I'm not even curious. I'm sure
mm,
he's fine. And it feels since in this time I made a decision to close that door. It's not him closing a door. Maybe that's easier. I don't know. But
mhm,
I
mhm,
feel that I have this sense of power and control in my life, whoever that is, even as a parent, it's whoever even my own mom or family, you get to choose whom you want to associate with in your life and cultivate your environment that you live.
Mhm.
And so that's I gained from this experience and the decision making that I don't want to choose a toxic person in my life. I work
Mm.
so hard in my life to choose a light and to despite all the difficulties, I chose to walk again, to look at the positive side of life. And if someone is bringing me down, keep
Mm.
bringing me down, and realize there's this pattern of thinking of negativity, and I don't want to do that. My life is hard
Mhm.
enough to trying to look at the positive side. So I close that door and I visit Korea once a year. And the funny thing is, I every now and then I wonder if he look up my name and on Google. I'm easily
Mm.
searchable. He may find me on YouTube. Maybe he find this in this
Mm.
conversation. You can all easily find it in a Google translator and hear what I have to say. But in part of me, he also closed that door too. He no longer associate or maybe once in a blue moon wonder, but he's still
Mm.
so wrapped around his own narcissistic self. It's not important to him. And because
Mhm.
of it, it's not that important to me either. And
Mhm.
that's not
Yeah.
a angry or the harsh place. It's more of a gentle place. It's too bad.
Mhm.
Yeah, I wish there were
Yes.
otherwise. But then one important thing I learned also is that I get to separate my childhood memory that I had wonderful memory with my dad, that he took me to this park and we gathered this nature and the wildflowers. And I have so many wonderful memories, my dad growing up.
Mhm.
And that nobody can take away from that particular memory. And I separate myself from current stage with this person, my dad currently. And also, I have this very special place in my heart that I cherish that memory, and I'm thankful for
Mhm.
that. That he was this Superman in my life, and he could do anything for
Mhm.
me, and he could lift me up so easily, and I'd giggle and laugh, and that was someone different, unfortunately,
Mhm.
but that's also wonderful, and I can easily
Mm.
go there and smile, and that doesn't become
Yes.
bitter when I think of now. So that I
Mhm.
could create a space between those two.
Yes. Yes. And I'm a firm believer that every relationship is meant to be a teacher. And some of the closest ones are our biggest teachers at times because that's some of that, the choices we make in terms of the karmic choices people talk about. But yeah. And as you're touching on it, like those memories can last eternity if you want it to. And then the last piece I'm hearing from you is you can choose light for yourself, but you can't make someone else choose it. And then, as you've shared, you made a choice that it was the cost was too much, that you were unwilling to pay it anymore. So,
Mm.
I appreciate all of that. Thank you so much for this conversation, for your vulnerability, for walking us through your process of sharing music with the world. I appreciate all of it. I learned so much from you, and I could see parts of myself in your story too. So I really appreciate all of that. But for listeners that want to learn more about your books, your music, what are some ways they can do
Mm.
that?
Yeah, I think the best way is all collected in my website, jeeyoonkim.com,
Mhm.
Jeeyoonkim.com. And if you want to hear maybe this podcast, Journey Through Classical Piano, where you can really hear my process of particular piece and we listen
Mhm.
together in that podcast, I always say, I believe classical music is for everyone. So let's listen together.
Mhm.
So I find the podcast is such an intimate medium. Of course, some
Mhm.
people might be watching on a YouTube in a more in the visual, but my podcast is only voice only and just me talking to the wall to you only. And I find it that interaction is also very special. And of course, if you can catch me live concert, that would be the one of the best way. If you happen to come to my live concert, listening to this particular podcast, please come by afterwards and say, tell me, and I would love to hear that. And
Hmm. Awesome.
easiest, one of the intimate way to interact with me is also reading my book. And the latest book is
Hmm.
called Beyond the Keys, and it's came out on Amazon and every platform that you purchase book. But of course, if you can come to my website, you can buy a signed copy as well.
Amazing. Yeah, we'll put all of that in the show notes. But thank you again for this conversation. It was, yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Thank you so much.